To Kenya now, where the national treasury has announced its annual budget. And this year, it is enormous. It usually is delivered in June, but many analysts believe President Uhuru Kenyatta brought forward the country's economic plan to reassure voters ahead of elections in August. These are some of the highlights. Now, the government has announced the largest spending plan in Kenya's history, worth $25 billion, which will be mainly financed through taxes and borrowing. Kenya's economy has been struggling in recent times with debts of almost $37 billion, and the government intends to narrow its fiscal deficit to between 6 and 6.5% of GDP, down from nearly 10% now. But with food prices at record highs, ordinary Kenyans can hardly make both ends meet. Peter Aminga says the main thing Kenyans want is price cuts on household goods. Another Twitter user says as the budget continues to grow, Kenyans are getting poorer. Meanwhile, Uko says taxes and corruption are sending living costs soaring. And Ricky points to upcoming elections, saying the deficit is huge and debt is increasing, but some will rally behind those who put us in this state. Earlier, I spoke to Aly-khan Satchu, who's a financial analyst based in Nairobi. He says things are likely to get difficult for both the government and ordinary Kenyans.
One of the biggest challenges for all African countries is creating jobs and employment for all these young people. I think, the government is focused on trying to do that, but it's a very big ask, and that's the biggest challenge.
We've been growing at around this kind of rate, between 5 and 6% for a few years now, and we've done quite well. But essentially this year, I think a number of things are going to make it very difficult to hit those sorts of targets. First of all, we got an election. People tend to become more defensive in business ahead of the election. They don't store as many goods. They try and keep things light. So it creates a slowdown effect. Anyway, you've got the drought, which has been very brutal. And I think that's going to slow the economy down. And also we had an interest rate capping act. So what it meant was banks were only able to lend at a particular rate, 14%. And what it did was choke off credit to a large part of the economy.